All right, everybody. Welcome to the RV Voice Mashup, the first of its kind. We got JB, myself, Josh the RV Nerd, and JD from Big Truck Big RV. Hope you can hear me. Josh, give me a thumbs up if you can.
I got you. Hey, quick note. If you see me commenting over here to you folks, that's actually me. That's somebody commenting for me. Just wanted to clarify that for you.
Josh has people.
Josh has people.
I'm giving you a thumbs up too.
All right, guys. Well, if you haven't heard, this today is being brought to you by BishFix. It is our internal service platform. But if you want to service a new, if you'd like a discounted price on that, type in promo code RV Voice. Click the link here below, and we're going to hop right into it too with two of the biggest experts in the game, JD and Josh, the RV Nerd. So today we're going to be talking about debunking the half-ton towability myths. But first, let's intro ourselves here. Josh, you've been in the industry for, I think, since 2000 something. I can't remember, 15 years or so. And then JD as well. So JD, would you like to start for us? Kind of tell us your background a little bit. And like everybody, I think they probably know who you are, but just kind of talk to you about yourself for a little bit.
Sure. So my YouTube channel at least started off with doing kind of comprehensive evaluations of trucks. And then I guess the automotive industry caught wind of them, and I started getting invited to various media events, press events all around trucks. It spiraled into RVs when my family kind of expanded our camping from tent camping to actually towable camping. And then at that point, it kind of made sense to start talking about both. So my background is that I've been an engineer for the last 24 years of my life, and a big focus of what I like to look for is all around how things are constructed, how things are built, towability, and just making sure that the right expectations are set around certain products. I know oftentimes people have the experience with, well, this is how I use it, which means it's totally okay. And then I like to kind of take a different approach to it and see how manufacturers say something should be used and apply that logic to how we like to use things, and then come away with a conclusion. But that's essentially where my channel started. And it started off as a truck review channel, and it's moved into RVs, and now it's predominantly an RV review channel with towing equipment, accessories, things like that.
Well, perfect. Just going to go right into what we're talking about today with half-ton towability, because there's a lot of people out there that say, well, my truck can tow it. My dad being one of them. I've seen it happen, and it didn't work out for him. So this is going to be a great conversation here. Josh, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, talk about your background?
Yeah, sure. Like Jake said, I started doing this about 16 years ago in 2009. And I kind of went through, my whole career has kind of been an accident, but my career sort of developed organically over time. And I think where my perspective kind of comes in is the way that I was initially taught to kind of pair up vehicles with RVs, I don't know is actually the correct or the safest way. And I kind of had to learn that down the line. And what I've kind of come to realize is the way that I think your average RV consumer and your average RV professional, basically at most levels, I don't know that they're properly trained to actually do this. I've actually I see a lot of the same kind of prats and pitfalls kind of coming in from vehicle sales professionals as well, because I don't know that they understand the RV side of things. And I think that I've just done it long enough that I've finally picked up the information. And there have been times in the past that, JD and I haven't always agreed on certain things, but I think this is one of those we both feel pretty similarly about. And I'm really curious to see how it all kind of comes down the pipeline,
Likewise, and I'm excited to talk about it because, like I said, debunking half-ton towability, it's a problem. What I saw as a salesman in Lincoln, Nebraska, when I started out, people were like, "Well, I get my truck and tow it." I'm like, "No, you really need to have this, that, and the other to tow this because of weight ratings and whatever have they." So the topic today is debunking half-ton towability myths and misconceptions and why it's relevant to the RV community. And let's let the ground rules a little bit here, guys. This is a friendly debate. This is not a back and forth, who's right, who's wrong, whatever it may be. It's a fact-based opinion, and time limits and responses are going to be kind of in. So I'm going to keep this thing flowing. Guys, towards the end, everyone commenting and chiming in, thank you for being here, but we will have a live Q&A towards the end of this thing. So stay tuned for that. We will be watching and monitoring your questions as we go along, see if we can catch those later at the end. But just so you know, we will be doing a live Q&A later on. So guys, let's kind of hop into it. Let's start this off. Let's go with the questions. Like, how do you, Josh, I'm going to actually start with you, JD. JD, how do you define half-ton towability in practical terms for RV buyers?
So that's a very broad question, but half-ton towability in reality for me means that if you have a half-ton truck and you plan on using it to tow any type of trailer, I'm not specifically referring to an RV. It could be a cargo trailer, it could be a boat, it could be a flat utility trailer. You have to know the numbers of your truck. And as many folks often assume that I believe you need a Peterbilt or an F450 to tow anything, the reality is I just believe that you need to understand both the numbers that apply to your truck from a payload capacity as well as a gross vehicle weight rating towability capacity. What do they say it can tow or pull, and what do they say it can carry? And then understand how much stuff you're going to put in the truck, how much stuff you're going to put in your trailer, and where that stuff is going to be positioned. All of that really determines half-ton towability. And failure to do any one piece of those right, you can check the box on having the right weight trailer, but if it's too heavy on the tongue, then you're not checking all your boxes, and you're potentially putting yourself in a dangerous position. But don't just think about yourself. You need to think about everybody else who's trying to travel on the road with you. And that's how I would kind of define half-ton towability.
Absolutely. And I always tell people when I was selling, it's like, hey, you got to remember everything you're taking, and yourselves and your dog, you know, and the water you're taking with you, whatever it may be. You got to add those things in there because your truck can only do so much and all that. So Josh, what do you have? How would you define that? Do you kind of have anything to add to that?
I think the problem with just using the phrase half-ton towability is there is no category of vehicle with a wider set of potential capacities and abilities than the half-ton category. You could have a half-ton that's rated to tow 6,500 or double that and everything in between. And the problem is when you just throw out half-ton towable as a blanket, it's too wide of a range. And it's such a pitfall because, you know, you could have like a Ford F-150 STX, which is far lighter duty than if you get the full EcoBoost max payload. And it's just not even the same truck, but they're both called an F-150. So they both get called a half-ton. And it puts people potentially in a bad spot. And there's too many professionals in the industry that will kind of take advantage of that intentionally or unintentionally. And I think that's what we want to hit on here.
Yeah. And then specifically within, say, Ford, you know, they have 3 or 4 different engines you can get in the F-150. And then they have gear ratios on top of that. I mean, I remember when I was searching for my F-150, there was 4 or 5 different ones just in the STX at the same time. So it was, I mean, there's a lot to know and a lot of, I guess, numbers on the inside of the window sticker type stuff and all that, when we'll get into that. But next question, Josh, let's start with you. What are the most common misconceptions that you see people with half-ton towability and low half-ton tow vehicles and towing RVs?
I think the recurring trend where I suspect we're going to run into here is that it's all focused on tow rating, tow capacity. What's your tow capacity? And that's rarely the number that's going to go into the red. I think one of the biggest misconceptions or just maybe misunderstandings is not knowing the difference between tow rating and payload rating, and the fact that you will almost always exhaust your payload rating before your tow capacity. Where it gets really funny too is like people don't know like what a payload rating is. They don't understand the difference between carrying weight in the truck versus pulling weight with the truck. And I think that's the biggest thing. If we accomplish one thing with this video, if we could get people to understand how important your payload rating is in this equation, I think that would probably be the best thing we could accomplish.
It's definitely going to be new knowledge to me a little bit. I'm thinking when you say payload, I'm just thinking cargo weight overall, which is, I'm guessing, basically same. But want to know more about that. So I'm excited to hear about it. JD, anything you want to add to that as a common misconception?
Yeah, I think here's a big one. So everybody knows the most capable truck ever produced was the Ford Ranger.
Ford Ranger?
And the Ford Ranger was a beast, and we all know that. But the reality here is, and this is going to blow a lot of people away, is that may not be too far from the truth. Believe it or not, the 95 Ford Ranger, which was one of the most common Ford Rangers people had 1,400 pounds properly equipped of payload capacity, which, believe it or not, that exceeds about 60% of the half-ton trucks sold from a payload perspective on the road. Most people don't know, and most people, like Josh said, they equate a half-ton truck to being the same as every half-ton truck on the road. Every time I make a video about half-ton towability, somebody wants to point to the Ford heavy-duty payload package half-ton truck that was produced for a period of time, had like 2,300 plus pounds worth of cargo capacity, was in very small numbers. Dealerships hardly sold any of them. They were really for fleet customers who wanted a super high capacity truck with a relatively low gross vehicle weight rating. But people say, well, that truck exists. Yes, that truck exists. So does the Ford Ranger from 1995. It doesn't mean you're going to get your hands on one to tow the way you want to tow. At the end of the day, you need to know your specific truck's payload capacity and tow rating. And most people don't. And the biggest misconception people have is that they see the commercial, they watch the Ford commercial with the F-150 hauling around, some 12,000 pound boat. And they say, that if I go to a Ford dealership and I buy any F-150, that's the type of payload capacity and towing I'm going to have. Not realizing that the only way you will get the maximum payload capacity out of a half-ton truck is getting it in a base configuration, a fleet configuration, lowest trim, two-wheel drive, long bed, regular cab truck, two-door truck. That's how you're going to get it, because they've stripped out all of the luxury features, which gives you back your payload capacity. But that also will not be the truck with the highest towing capacity. So just as Josh said, you will never know just by looking at a truck from the outside what its payload and what its towing capabilities are, unless you look at the sticker, unless you look at the numbers in the door, and unless you truly research the specific truck you're looking at.
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers, just like GCWR, GVWR, whatever it may be, and there's a lot more to it. Payload capacity on top of that. There's a lot of numbers and a lot of calculations you really got to be a part of, really, really getting dialed down to it. You should never really stretch it. I mean, I always had this as kind of a safe number, 1,500 to 2,000 pounds at minimum. And now I know that's kind of changes per segment, but that was just my sales experience. We had a lot of lake hoppers or just weekenders that would do that. So, that's what I went off of for towing capacity. But knowing now, I probably wasn't doing the best for everybody that I could have. But in your experience, what type of RVs are typically marked as half-ton towable? And then is this always accurate? JD, I'd love to start with this one.
Oh, absolutely not. It's all marketing. The reality is every time I see a conventional fifth wheel, and what I mean by that is I'm not talking about a Casita. I'm not talking about some boutique brand that makes a fiberglass super small pod fifth wheel. I'm talking about your traditional fifth wheel from any of the big threes. If they market as a half-ton towable fifth wheel, they are usually only doing that based on the gross vehicle weight rating, or basically the loaded weight rating of the trailer itself, and very specific half-ton trucks that could potentially have that rating. But the reality of it is almost every single time the pin weight, the amount of weight pressing down on the back of the truck, is going to be at or above the maximum cargo capacity of that truck. And that's before you put people inside of that truck. That's before you load your generator or you load your dog and your food and everything inside of the truck that you plan on loading. So in most cases, half-ton towable fifth wheels is a myth to me. I do believe there are a few, most being boutique brands. But again, unless you have that unicorn of a truck, that F-150 heavy-duty payload package truck with 2,600 pounds worth of cargo capacity, and then you find the lightest half-ton towable 9,500 pound GVWR Keystone or Grand Design or whatever fifth wheel, you're not going to find the magic two vehicles and put them together. You just don't see it. Travel trailers, for the most part, people just assume are always half-ton towable. And that's also a big misconception. But again, I do believe that fifth wheels are more commonly advertised as half-ton towable because the manufacturers want you to believe that we made one that finally hits all the right marks so you can tow it with your half ton. And that's a very, very dangerous advertising campaign.
Yeah. And not to point any fingers at specific manufacturers, but the Jayco Eagle half ton HT, the Eagle HT in the travel trailer segment, ain't a chance. The tongue weight on those things was outrageous, and they're massive and they're gorgeous RVs. I'd love to see it. But even the guy that I had, I sold one too. It was a, I don't know, 295 something I can't remember the exact number, but he had a 3/4 ton and he had to get like his track bars kind of beefed up and all that. And it was a big deal for him to do so. But Josh, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I think he hit on a couple major ones there, but something he said on the previous question, you need to, if you want to maximize things like payload and whatnot, you need to get the 2-wheel drive truck. Another big misconception is, well, mine's the 4x4. That doesn't increase its capacities whatsoever. You actually lose some capacities a little bit due to the weight of the extra hardware there. Now, there's a lot of awesome benefits to a 4x4. It's probably the truck I'd prefer to have, but I think JD really nailed that, and I am just where my knowledge has changed over the years. I used to pair people up with stuff that, again, I don't know that today I would, but as I've learned more, I've found out that, man, I don't really like the idea of pairing up half tons with fifth wheels, and really, once you get past that kind of like 30-foot one slide trailer size, and this can vary a little bit, but that kind of rough barometer, it feels like we start to exceed, you start running into that payload problem, you know what I mean? And that's one of those things that, again, we keep going back to that, keeps going. It's just not all about tow rating. In fact, the more that I've learned, it's almost never about tow rating. This is another really weird thing that people run into is, so you find a 30-foot one slide trailer and you're taking your family out, and you forget how to calculate the payload, because, as JD said, you have to incorporate all of the body weight of the people and all the cargo in the truck. That subtracts from your payload rating before you even figure out the hitch weight of the trailer. And maybe you could tow a 30-foot couples camper with a slide with your vehicle's capacities, but by the time you load your whole family into the thing, you've eaten up so much of your cargo capacity, you might only be towing a 24, 25-foot bunkhouse trailer with a slide, because you just have less payload available. There's a lot of questions that people are throwing in over here, like, what about if I throw airbags on that? That's definitely one that I think we want to focus on at the Q&A at the end of this right there. Mm-hmm. But again, the fifth wheel thing, there are some brands that absolutely, they use numbers like 150 or 1500, or even just the literal word half ton as the name of their brand. And it completely messes everybody up. I see it in the comment section when I go through and I review them, even though I'm very outspoken, like, I don't want you to pair this with a half ton. People say, well, if this is a half ton, then why can't my truck handle it? It's like, well, the manufacturer said this, but now you're saying this, and why would you believe me over them? People are like, you're just trying to get people to buy a bigger truck. I'm not. I have no horse in that race. I just don't want to see you in the ditch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a safety hazard at that point, right? That's the big issue. And a lot of people don't really think about that when it's like, well, again, this thing can tow that. You see a Ford F-150 commercial pulling a 737 Boeing down the runway. Well, okay, sure, but doesn't mean it can handle that. You know what I mean? It's the typical marketing scheme. It is what it is. But let's kind of get into the common myths. Let's move on to the next section here. Common myths and misunderstandings. So the myth one being, a half-ton truck can tow any RV under its rated tow capacity. So let's focus on size, maybe wind resistance, whatever it may be. All these things that play into this, because it's a big issue, and a lot of people just, it's a half-ton pick. It's half-ton towable. I can do so. So let's. I think JD started last time. Josh, would you like to start with this one?
Well, again, I sound like a broken record here, but it's just payload. If you get like the really fancy loaded up half ton with the power running boards and the bigger power plant and all the extra things, the more weight the vehicle has added onto it, the less weight it has left over to carry stuff, you know. And people have a little bit of a disconnect there. And I like to take this out of the realm of thinking about RVs and just think about your personal experience. So imagine if, you know, you're a person who maybe could, we'll say, deadlift 200 pounds. Okay. Now, if you decide to wear a backpack with 30 pounds of bricks in it, you can now only deadlift 170 pounds after that. That's what your truck is going through. The more bricks, the more stuff you load onto that truck, the less it can carry. And, you know, you might look at a lot of RVs that, let's say it only weighs like, you know, it could have it weighs 6,000 pounds. That's a major problem. People think I need to pair up the trailer's dry weight, the trailer's minimum weight, empty, against my vehicle's maximum capacity. Well, you're pairing minimums to maximums, not comparing maximums to maximums. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that you read the weight tag, the empty weight on the RV, and you compare that to the max tow capacity on your vehicle. And if you're not negative, then you're good, right? And what you want to do is look at the trailer's GVW, full max loaded weight rating. And you need to make sure that GVW is within your maximum tow capacity, because that means that no matter what cargo you put in this, you're at least not going to exceed your max tow rating. There's a quick calculation you can also do to estimate to a fairly accurate degree an RV's loaded hitch weight. You might want to rewatch this video or scribble this down real quick, but basically you take the trailer's empty hitch weight divided by the trailer's empty weight, and that'll give you a ratio, usually between 10 to 15%. Now multiply that by the GVW, and that will give you a very close, reasonable estimation of your maximum hitch weight fully loaded with cargo. But the way you load cargo, the way I load cargo might be different. You want to get it scaled, but I've talked enough. I don't want to talk over JD here.
JD, got anything to add to that?
I usually am just a major long run on Senate, so I appreciate you taking up some of that. So, but yeah, when it comes to myths and misconceptions, there's a lot of them with half tons, and the thing is nobody wants to call somebody's truck incapable. I think we all spend a lot of money for vehicles these days. Yeah, you look out the window, and you look out the window and you say, "Man, I just paid $60,000 for a half-ton truck. I love it, and it can do anything." But, you know, I was reading through the comments, and Brian D left a comment that said, my Ram 1500 is rated at 12,000 pounds towing with 392 gear ratio, which means he's doing his research on his truck. However, his payload's only 1,319 pounds. And then he ends it with, my trailer options are limited. That's somebody who's done the research. That's somebody who's ready to make an informed decision when they're going out to buy any type of trailer, especially a travel trailer. Now, the thing that most people really, really need to understand, and we talk about towability here, but before we talk about towability, before we talk about towing a trailer, let's talk about how you typically would put stuff in your truck without towing a trailer. The way I usually try to calculate that, I base numbers on kind of that universal calculator that the automotive manufacturers say. A family of 4 typically weighs between 600 and 800 pounds. That's a modern American family of 4. And that, of course, will vary. You could have someone who's very lightweight. You could have somebody who drives in the truck by himself. But the fewer people you have in the vehicle, if you were going to say, you know, I'm a single person, I'm the only one driving the truck, nobody else is going to be in there, I'm a minimalist. Well, you've essentially created a scenario where you may be able to haul a slightly larger travel trailer or slightly larger RV because you're taking up less of your payload capacity with people and the stuff that people bring with them. So the challenge we run into is like that gentleman who has that Ram, and he knows that he's about 1,300 pounds worth of cargo capacity. If you take 600 to 700 pounds and add that or deduct that from the cargo capacity of that vehicle, how much remaining cargo capacity do you have for hitch weight? That's the key. Now, here's the biggest misconception people have, is that a max tow equipped half-ton truck is as capable as a standard 3/4 ton truck. And the way you really just throw that myth away is take each one of those trucks for a drive. The half-ton truck's going to feel like a luxury car. The 3/4-ton truck's going to feel like a 3/4-ton truck. That stiffness of the suspension plays a huge factor in terms of how that truck's going to handle bumps, how it's going to handle sway, how it's going to handle expansion joints, how it's going to handle anything you go over. So when we get into the airbag section of this towards the end, I have a huge opinion on using airbags, and it might shock people because it might not be what you want to hear if you placed your order for airbags.
Okay. Yeah. I had just a real plug here. My dad bought a travel trailer and a half-ton pickup. And I was like, Dad, you have a 3/4-ton pickup. You need to put, no, not a travel trailer. He bought a truck camper, like an older truck camper. I said, you need to put it in that 3/4-ton pickup. He's like, well, my half-ton could do it. And I'm like, it's offensive to me, Dad, that you're not listening to me because this is the industry I work in. But he bought airbags and he thinks it rides just fine. And whatever, I tell him it's a safety concern, but it is what it is. So, JD, I think that was very insightful. I appreciate that. I mean, I think that makes sense to everybody listening. The calculations alone, it's kind of hard, and it's hard to kind of find that stuff as you go into the internet looking for that stuff. So, this next myth is actually kind of diving into that extra accessory suspension, and all that. So, upgrading a half-ton pickup with accessories, is that going to help it? Is that going to do a whole lot? I mean, what do airbags actually do? You can do stiffer track bars. I've heard that people do that. What do you guys have to say to that, Josh?
Yeah, that's one of those things, again, that I've kind of, as I've learned what they actually do, I've changed my opinion and recommendations, those professionally over the years. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about suspension upgrades on a half-ton is like, well, I'm going to add a spring assist or I'm going to add airbags. That does not make up for a lacking payload rating. Airbags do not change your factory payload rating. They stiffen up your suspension. They can force the thing to ride a little more flat so that the nose of your vehicle isn't, nose high in the air so that it forces it back down. But they will, they'll give you some good stability. So if you're within your payload rating, but you're at the higher end of it, a lot of your suspension is doing the job of carrying it. So you don't have a lot kind of left over. And if you get hit by like a heavy crosswind or something, you might get a lot of body roll, and airbags will bulk up and stiffen up back there so that you stay vertical, you stay straight and narrow. And as you're, when you're turning the RV, it's not trying to roll like this because it has the better foundation under it. Same with any sort of spring assist or anything like that. The other thing, let's just say, God forbid, you get in some kind of major accident. If Johnny Law goes checking the weight tags, or because the insurance adjuster needs this information, if they look at your payload, they look at this trailer, if they have a way of finding out the numbers, they don't care if you put airbags on it. They're going to use the factory tag. Where do you take that truck to get it re-rated if you provided modifications? I've done this for about 16 years. I've never had somebody give me a great answer. And I'm sure there's some place maybe you could and get official DOT updated tags, but you're not going to change your legal capacity. And that's a major deal. You could really end up, I mean, I could see somebody unintentionally landing a manslaughter charge because of something like that. You know what I mean? And maybe that's a dramatic example, but I don't think it's unplausible necessarily.
Not in this world, no. So JD, maybe JD from Big Truck Big RV might know where you can get DOT approved with something like this.
Well, I know a few answers and a few things that might be insightful here, but Josh nailed it on the head. Think about it this way. Even if it's not against the law for a non-commercial driver to be towing a trailer that's beyond the truck's capability, we see that all the time. Go to Home Depot and see how many folks are loading up roofing supplies and concrete in the back of a Forerunner. It's insane. That said, even though there may not be some legal law against it, at least in the state I live in or some of the states I've traveled through, a law saying that you can't do it doesn't mean an attorney can't go after you for doing something negligent. So I think anybody who understands law to any degree understands that there's personal negligence that can also come into play. And if you've not done the research on your vehicle, and then you decide to go out and tow this huge RV, they're going to say, wait, you can make the informed decision to go out and spend $100,000 on an RV behind your vehicle, but you're going to do no, you're not going to improve your knowledge on either of these at all before you take it on the road and possibly put yourself in a situation where you're going to hurt people. So what ends up happening is, and I feel for people that do this. They go out, they buy their F-150 or their Chevy 1500 or Ram 1500, and it's a beautiful truck. It's a Lariat, a Denali, Laramie, whatever. They have the truck that they've spent their money on. They don't want to go out and buy another truck. They can't afford to, maybe. Maybe they'd be upside down. Or maybe the family just doesn't want to move to a rougher riding truck when they're not towing. Because the fact is, most people only tow their RV a couple times a year. So if you're only towing it 3 or 4 times a year max, then why do you want to have a truck that's going to give you this rough ride all the other times you're using it? So people have this self-justification of why they should hold on to their truck. But then all of a sudden they start Googling, they start going to YouTube, they start looking at their truck supply store locally, and they say, hey, this guy wants to sell me some help relief springs. He wants to sell me some airbags and a heavier duty sway bar. And he's telling me that by adding this stuff, my truck is totally fine to tow a heavier trailer. That's the problem people run into. They believe that. This is a part where Josh touched on it, but I'll add to it. So we know that by adding anything to the truck, it's going to do what? It's going to reduce the available payload capacity of that truck. So when I installed airlift airbag on my F450 truck, for the whole purpose of knowing that if I put 5,000 pounds in the bed of my truck, I can level the load out. Believe it or not, the only reason I put airbags on that truck was because I did not want to blind oncoming traffic with my headlights at night, or when I hitched up my fifth wheel, which only had a 3,600 pound pin weight. It's still enough to bring the back of the truck down to where the headlights are pointing up enough to where it's blinding oncoming traffic. Airbags, for me, the only reason I had airbags was to level out the truck, not to have this pretty looking level ride, but to get my headlights back down on the road so I wasn't being inconsiderate and unsafe to the people who were driving towards me at night. Now, that kit weighs about 75 pounds. Once you install it on your vehicle, you have now reduced your vehicle's available payload capacity by 75 pounds by adding something that somebody may have sold you as increasing your payload capacity. It doesn't. Airbags do not add weight distribution, at least to your truck. They'll distribute weight to your trailer, but they're not going to distribute weight to your truck. A weight distribution system is what distributes weight to your truck. When you use airbags on a truck, you're only really doing it to add stability, like Josh mentioned, and you're doing it to get the front of your truck level again, or the back of your truck level again, so you're not blinding oncoming traffic. That's really what it comes down to. It does nothing for payload capacity, and in some ways, it can actually create more stress on your frame. It can create more stress on segments of the body of your truck because you're now creating leverage and energy in areas that it wasn't designed for. It's being added to the truck. It doesn't necessarily mean your truck's going to crack in half or fail, but what it's definitely doing is it's creating engineering challenges that weren't designed into the inherent body or structure of that truck by the engineers of the truck. So you always have to be careful of that. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to make your truck fail, but it does mean that you are potentially reducing your available payload capacity, working under the assumption you're improving your cargo capacity when you're not, and possibly adding stress to certain areas of your frame.
A quick follow-up on that. I kind of mentioned, we both mentioned airbags don't change your payload. And yeah, it forces your ride level, but it doesn't change the stress, like he said, coming in on the vehicle. You still have the same stress on the chassis, on the brakes, on the drivetrain, and those things aren't being enhanced. Like Michael over here in the comment section, he's like, well, if I had airbags, then brakes, then upgrade axles, then upgrade the frame, that at that point you just bought a new truck is what you just should have done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's but again, safety plays into a lot of this, which is really kind of the issue in the long run. But we're going to come back to the safety. I actually skipped something that I want to touch on. Do you feel, I know that marketing kind of plays in this question a little bit, but do you feel that RV dealerships and maybe manufacturers alone often mislead customers about half-ton towability in general. JD, you didn't get to start last time, so I apologize, but let's hear from you on this one.
100, 1,000, 1,000,000% yes. Without a doubt, unequivocally, absolutely. And I'm not going to say all of them do. You have your Joshes out there. You have informed folks who are very careful, but a lot of times the turnover at dealerships is pretty high, and the people that they bring on just are there to sell a product. They don't know what we're talking about. Josh and I have been doing this for a long time. We look into this because if you want to do this for a long time, you want to keep your job, you want to enjoy doing this, you have to take a very, very personal side to this of understanding that you need to make sure people are as safe as possible, and spreading that message is important. So when I first got into RVing, I had an F-250, 2011 F-250. A lot of people vaguely remember that if they started watching my channel almost 9 years ago now. And that truck was a Lariat package. It had about 2,300 pounds worth of cargo capacity because the Power Stroke diesel that everyone would assume would be the better towing engine is going to give me more tow capacity and payload. But in fact, it's not, because it's about 1,000 pounds heavier than the gas V8. So it actually reduced my cargo capacity by almost 1,000 pounds. If I would have gotten that truck with a gas V8, I would have had over 3,000 pounds worth of cargo capacity, but I didn't. I went to a local RV dealership and I asked them what RV could I tow on their dealership lot. And the salesman said, "You can tow anything here." And I knew enough to know that that's not the answer I wanted to hear. But when I started looking at the numbers and I started calculating dry pin weight versus loaded, where you're going to put stuff, where they always put your storage for the most part, right? 80% of fifth wheels, travel trailers, it's nose front storage, it's basement storage up in the front area, where your washer and dryer goes, where all that stuff goes. If you have a generator, it's all pretty much up front. And I realized pretty quickly that even a relatively medium-sized, mid-profile fifth wheel was going to be transferring close to 3,000 pounds to the back of my truck. You realize very quickly that people are just trying to make a sale sometimes. There are ethical sales reps out there, absolutely, and you need to find them. And typically, if you go to a dealership lot as a consumer and you say, "This is my truck, I want to look at units first and foremost that I can tow with this truck," the first thing they should do is look at your door sticker, look at the numbers there, do a little research on the truck that you have, even if they have to pull out their smartphone and do some Google searching on what the payload ranges are, and come up with a fairly comprehensive idea or plan of what to show you based off of those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't trained that way. It took me a while to even get comfortable with selling these things because it's a safety concern for me. I came from the roofing industry. I was building houses for years before that. So it was a totally different ball game for me as a salesman, but I wasn't comfortable selling till about 3 to 6 months in is when I really kind of took off. And weight rating obviously isn't the only thing that plays into this. So but I had no idea. I had no news to it. So Josh, what do you have to add to that?
Well, it popped up on screen here. "Hey Josh, what do you drive?" I couldn't handle the Ford Ranger. I got myself the baby Ranger, the Ford Maverick myself, with a whopping 4,000 pounds of tow capacity. And I think at the most I would ever tow with that is a lawnmower to the repair shop. But yeah, JD, it crushed it. I think a lot of it's a combination of intentional, unintentional, and the cultures of the places. I do think it's not an accident that the stereotypes of, if you go to the dealership, and again, it could be automotive and it could be RV dealerships, that they're going to tell you kind of what you want to hear so that you buy the thing. Now, I have found the majority of the salespeople that I've personally interacted with at different dealerships, at all kinds of different places, because doing what I do, I actually interact with a lot of other salespeople at other organizations. I have found that most of them really do want to do a good job for their customers, but very few of them come from a background where they walk in with the knowledge of how to do this. So,
JD, did you see him just pop off?
oh, there we go. We got Oh no, we got a whole era. But anyway, I think I think that the culture of some organizations, it kind of comes down to, some of them have pay scales where you get paid only when these things sell, and some people don't care about other people, and they have a way of getting into these positions that tend to earn them larger incomes, and that tends to put them leading other people, and then they infect the frontline salespeople or service staff who get unintentionally bad information, and then they pass that along to customers because that's what their boss told them, and their boss has been doing this 8 years. Why he would have to know the correct answer, right? And it ends up being this trickle down thing. And there's so much from manufacturers. I've actually had a manufacturer's staff member talk to me about how greatly they disliked how JD disagreed with them about how their fifth wheel was half-ton towable. I'm going to leave the names and everything out, but I don't even know that the people who design the RVs sometimes are properly trained on this stuff. And then the hard part is, even if it is engineered or built with a specific thing, once it goes through a marketing filter, if they're like, ooh, that limits who we can sell this to, we don't like that, sometimes that gets left out a little bit, whether the marketing agents decide to do that, whether it's the culture of that organization. And then that becomes the basis of training, where the manufacturer's rep comes in and goes, yeah, we got these fifth wheels that are half-ton towable, or this big trailer is half-ton towable. And the salespeople at the store's like, well, I mean, he works for the factory. Why would they mislead me? Why would they ever steer me wrong? And it ends up just being this constant crap rolls downhill thing, where at the bottom, at the end of the day, is the customer who spent lots and lots of money and has all the liability. And often it's very much too late, because most places don't have the 72-hour return policy that we do. And most places are going to be like, you took it over the curb, it's yours now.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Let's kind of, from all that, let's kind of move into the safety aspect of things. And I always had like I said, I always like, at least in travel trailer instance, like at least 2,000 pounds, because a lot of them were like less than 32 foot. A little that I was selling, like, again, kind of just lake hoppers on the weekends. But the safety factors that come into this, like what are those things that are often overlooked in that with a half-ton towing with a half-ton truck? And do you guys have any specific instances that you have, encountered serious injuries or anything, misjudging of half-ton towing? And then how about terrain? How does terrain pull into this? Because, I come from the flatlands of Nebraska. It's a little different. And the northern side of Nebraska, western side of Nebraska, yes, there is some up and down, and that really kind of plays into towing, because you can really race up, or how would I say this, overheat your transmission or bust gears, whatever it may be. Who opened last time? I think it was JD. So JD, would you, Josh, would you like to open with this one a little bit?
Yeah. So this is really, when I joined with Bish's RV, I that's when my better understanding of towing really started to grow and expand, because I got to hands-on experience some new things and some new regions and some new terrains. Like you, Jake, I come from flatlands, southern Michigan. Like even the upper part of the lower peninsula of Michigan call us flatlanders, because it's cow farms and cornfields. It's just like you had back in Nebraska. And there's a reason they just call the whole thing the Midwest, because it all really does look the same.
Yeah.
But what is half-ton towable where I live, I found very quickly was not necessarily the same half-ton towable as, say, like in Idaho around the Rocky Mountains, in Salt Lake City, or even in Davenport, Iowa. Davenport is as flat and corny as the rest of us. But my first trip out to Davenport, Iowa, I don't think we had a day that was less than 30 miles an hour crosswind. And where I live, winds like that will shut down school buses. But that's like every day Tuesday in Davenport, Iowa. And as I'm driving my rental car back and forth from the store down the highway to the hotel, I remember like my upper body, I was getting tired because I was fighting into the wind so hard. And I went under an overpass, and my vehicle whipped half a lane, and it got pushed back to the center where I was supposed to be when I cleared the overpass. And then I took note of that. I'm like, holy cow. Like, that was in a tiny little car, not towing a giant square brick sailboat behind me. And the next day, I saw a guy hooked up to a 26-foot, probably truly 30-foot tip to tail travel trailer with a 3/4 ton truck. And I didn't investigate his capacity is really heavy, but I walked over and I said, hey, I'm just kind of curious. How does this handle that? He goes, man, it's in a day like today, it's all she wants to handle. I can keep it on the road, but it's work. And I instantly went, I have to change how I go about my videos and how I talk towing and I give vehicle suggestions, because where you tow is as important as what you tow. You start going up inclines, some gas motors, when the air thins out, you might lose up to half your horsepower. That is just, you're going to be creeping at 45 mile an hour on the highway or less. You have to shift out of drive and you have to shift manually into like third gear just to get up the hills.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different experience when you're towing up inclines and at elevation versus when you are flatland close to sea level, like where I live. It's a very different experience in some parts of the country. And if you want to go cross country, you need to absolutely consider the terrain that you're going to go through, or plan some really long routes out of the way.
That's true. Take the scenic route, right? Even though the scenic route's probably through the inclines and all that. So, JD, what do you have to add on to that?
So I'm not going to really contest anything that he said because it's all 100% accurate. I'm going to add to it by saying that where most people probably feel, if they disagree with me, it's in this one area, that when I make recommendations about half-ton towing, safety recommendations, everyone thinks that my recommendations apply to everybody. But the reality is there's a lot of people out there who have a tremendous amount of experience. They know exactly how to dial in weight distribution. They know how to load their trailer, where to load it. They know what the capability of their vehicle is, and they can tow very safely, even at or near at max capacity of their vehicle. They're that good at configuring their rig. You see them all the time. They're typically the ones that have loaded everything up, and for some reason, everything still looks safe. When I make my recommendations here around safety, it's because the vast majority of people think that if my truck looks level and my RV looks level, I'm good to go. And oftentimes the misconception people have, which cause safety issues, are the overuse of weight distribution. People automatically think weight distribution fixes my problem, and they put themselves in a very unsafe position. People don't often realize that a weight distribution hitch that's improperly set up, even though you look at it from the side and everything looks level, could be adding a significant amount of overstrain to the front A-frame section of your trailer, or even to the frame and hitch components of your truck. Or you could be removing so much weight and moving it to different parts of the RV that, again, even though everything is level looking, it does not mean that you're safely towing. And it means that you're potentially even more unsafe than if you had not used a weight distribution hitch. People don't realize that terrain plays a factor with weight distribution when you're going uphill and the trailer is flat and the truck's going uphill, because you add thousands of additional pounds to the front section of your RV. Folks oftentimes believe that if something fails, it's because a manufacturer did something wrong. And that does happen a lot. We all know in the RV world, RVs aren't built like Lexuses. They're not the most reliable things out there. But there are sure a lot of things you can do unintentionally where you're actually causing problems that you did not realize you were causing when you thought you were doing things correctly. The safety aspect that most people, again, they don't realize is that the length of the truck matters. A longer wheelbase truck is inherently going to be more stable. It's a longer lever arm. It's harder for torsional forces to cause it to shift and move. A longer trailer is going to be more difficult to tow because it's going to be a larger wind profile. It's going to have a larger side profile, a longer overhang. Loading your RV up properly is critical, not overloading your RV. I always say, you know what, people believe that they need to be on a diet to be healthy. Their RVs oftentimes need to be on a diet as well. Going in and saying, if I can remove a couple 100 pounds from the back of my RV, from the front of my RV, does that matter? It absolutely does matter. People ask me all the time, can I drive around with full tanks? You probably could, but you shouldn't. That's the reality of it is you could risk the tank falling out on the ground. Yes, that kind of failure could occur, but you're also adding a significantly higher amount of weight to your entire rig that's unnecessary. That's the key. So when it comes to a safety aspect, I've seen it. I have seen, you guys have no idea how many pictures get emailed to me and Instagram to me of RVs that have ended up in really crazy situations. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the interstate and I've seen an RV on its side, on the side of the interstate in pieces. And a lot of times that can be attributed to a driver not paying attention, a driver being distracted, somebody swerving or cutting off the driver, some type of an incident happening. But a lot of times it can also be attributed to controllable things, such as driving through heavy winds without a proper weight distribution, without properly setting up your trailer, and not understanding how when I left my home for the first 300 miles, everything was great. The weather was perfect. But then all of a sudden I crossed into another state and I had a 40-mile-an-hour crosswind and things got really, really sketchy. You have to plan for that. And you have to understand that every part of how you set up your truck and your trailer, how they work together, and understanding the dynamics of everything is critically important.
For those of us who are not automotive engineers, like our friend JD, he said how it's a larger lever arm and torsional stresses. Here's the simplified layman's way that I found success sharing with people. The longer your vehicle, the more stable your thing, like he said. But basically, think of it like this. The wider your turning radius, the worse your turning radius, the more stable your towing experience is, because the vehicle organically is less inclined to shift and pivot on an axis versus the thing is, that's not the vehicle we want to drive every day. And a lot of this, again, is based on half tons. That is often somebody's daily driver. So when we get these short bed, short box half tons versus a long bed quad cab 1 ton, when you get the really short wheelbase vehicles, their ability to turn is they can turn a lot sharper to get in those Walmart parking spots. But that also means the trailer can push their back end sideways more easily and send you doing this down the road with the tail wagging the dog. So that's another thing, like how not all half tons are equal. You got a 2-door short bed half ton. You have a quad cab long bed half ton. Not that there's a ton of those out there, but you get the idea. When that one vehicle is like 3 foot longer, it's significantly more capable of handling safely the same 30-foot trailer out there, especially for the average user who does not have commercial driver's license training. For those of us, most of us took driver's training the last time when we were 16 years old, and you can't tell me spit. Well, if you really want to be safer towing this thing, a longer vehicle is another good way to go. That's an awesome point that he brought up there.
Yeah, and there's a little video that I saw. I don't know if it's on. It's got to be on YouTube somewhere. It's basically this little toy car and a trailer on a treadmill, and they put the weight at the back end, and they touch it, and the thing just gets worse and worse and worse, and it gets gnarly. Same with wind. If someone was like you packing up the backside of your backside of your RV, it's the same thing's gonna happen. So you got to distribute weight properly when you're driving and towing this thing, because that's a big part of the issue. And then going across like I-80 specifically, dead center of the U.S. in the flatland, is the windy states. It is nasty. I've seen semis literally pick up the back end, and they've shut down I-80 just because of wind. Just because of wind. It happens in Wyoming all the time. I can barely go through Wyoming without getting rerouted. But it is very, very important to properly load your RV. If you want to be on the front side, guys, is that right? You want to be more so towards the front?
Yeah.
Yeah.
front tows better than weight in the back. Sorry, JD, didn't mean to step on your toes.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I was going to make a comment here real quick, because a lot of people are now going to say, well, why does my truck have a 13,000 pound tow capacity? Because there are configurations of all trucks that have really, really high tow capacities, but their payload capacity is relatively low. So why do I have a 13,000 pound towing capacity, but the manufacturer only gave me, a 1,500 pound capacity within the truck as far as payload capacity? And here's a good way of kind of justifying this. A lot of people automatically assume when we talk about towing, we're talking about towing anything. Towing a travel trailer is entirely different than towing a flat utility trailer. If I'm towing a flat utility trailer, I'm more inclined to tow at the higher ratings of my truck, because I can position that weight wherever I want on that flat trailer. I can take a UTV and I can back it up a few inches. I can pull it forward a few inches. I can get everything dialed in. If it's a dump trailer, I can load the dirt over the axles. I can load it slightly forward of the axles. If I'm loading my excavator or skid steer, I can load it slightly forward. I can move the weight around dynamically to allow myself the type of pin weight or tongue weight I know I need, whether it's a gooseneck trailer or a conventional trailer, but I have that option. With travel trailers, 90% of the stuff inside of the trailer is static. It's put there by the manufacturer. It's screwed into place. It's nailed into place and glued into place. You don't have that capability of just moving stuff around whenever you want. The only thing you can move around is the stuff you bring with you. And oftentimes you're limited to where you can put that stuff. So when we talk about towability, we have to say you can't just assume that Josh and I are saying half-ton trucks are crap and you can't use them for anything. You have to understand that towing an RV is a lot different than towing a cargo trailer, a flat utility trailer, a gooseneck trailer, a deck over trailer, because you don't have that customized ability to move your weight around.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of, let's roll into the next section on that, because it kind of, there's no real good way of calculating this, unfortunately, especially when, like you said, JD, these things are it's static. It's put there. It ain't moving. Weight's kind of just how it is. It's just there. And then you got to put your stuff in there properly. So let's do it like tools and resources for RV buyers with the half-ton towing. Like, how do you really measure? What are some key tools, resources for RV buyers that should you use determining half-ton truck, what it can tow specific for an RV, what steps should buyers take when calculating payload, tongue weight, gross combined weight rating, all these things? What I know, JD specifically, you have a tongue scale type deal that I saw that was really cool. But I've also heard of I believe a weight distribution hitch that has a scale on it. Is that true?
Yeah, WaySafe has a product. Actually, all of their weight distribution hitches have scales built into them to help calculate tongue weight.
Awesome. Well, if you want to expand on that, what are some other tools and resources? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I think most people know, and I'll give a little plug here, is that I've worked with my channel sponsor, eTrailer. We developed a tongue weight scale. It's the second generation of a scale that they were offering a few years back. People really, really liked it. And you, the viewer of my channel, chimed in and said, these are some improvements we'd like to see to how you can use it. So we made those improvements, and it is now a Big Truck Big RV scale that is sold through eTrailer. So understanding, having tools to properly understand what type of weight you're transferring to your tow vehicle is incredibly important. But I'm going to give you the best resource of all, YouTube. Just being honest with you, you can Google search, you can find all this stuff, but there are so many folks on YouTube. My friends over at Keep Your Daydream, Changing Lanes, these are all folks that live the lifestyle, and they've all made very comprehensive videos on understanding how to use a CAT scale, understanding how weight applies to your vehicle, understanding what accessories can actually help you, like adding disc brakes sometimes, adding independent suspension, things like that, in certain instances can absolutely help you and create a more controllable ride at times. But the reality is there are so many resources out there. As long as you're willing to go into those resources open-minded and not go in there with your own perception that you're not willing to change. That if you only search for content that supports what you believe, you're going to find yourself in a dangerous situation a lot of times. If you want to prove us wrong that there are half-ton towable fifth wheels out there, and you're going to hunt for that, and you will not give up until you find it, and that's going to be what you buy, you're trying to force what the industry is saying you could do, but what the people who are trying to educate you on this are telling you you shouldn't do. So The resources are out there. They're all over the place. It's really just finding people who are credible, who do this, who have experience, who have experienced failure. I mean, boy, it only takes you watching a YouTuber who accidentally didn't couple his fifth wheel kingpin, watch it drop on the bed of his truck one time for you to realize that I'm not going to let that happen to me. I'll let his mistake be the reason why I'll never deal with that again. So
Oof.
great when you use your resources and you look for those resources.
Yeah. Well, Josh, what do you have to add on to that?
Well, I have a question for the chat, actually. If you're enjoying the kind of collab that we have going here with JD, what do you think about JD? What if you sent me one of those scales and somehow you and I put together a video that we help broadcast out there, showing people kind of what this thing actually does? Is that something we should get into? I'd really be curious to see what people think about that. But yeah, use your resources. Like he said, one of the hardest things about this whole thing is that you will never actually know your RV's hitch weight, basically, until it's too late. And what I don't mean is until you get into an accident. What I mean is, first, the first resource you have to look at is the manufacturer's website and or brochures. But that will be the empty base, completely dry model RV before propane, before battery, before graham crackers, before anything is put into this. And they're going to measure that hitch weight. Then you apply options to the RV. Now, imagine in the case of something like a fifth wheel, and you add a generator to the front area, and you have a massive front storage compartment. So you add a generator, which basically I've really not seen manufacturers that will tell you what the loaded, scaled hitch weight of that specific RV is as it was built. A lot of them do measure it, but they never tell us. They don't even tell dealers. It's not like the truck dealership. I can't punch in your VIN number, and I can't tell you what the hitch weight of your RV is. So you have to use some general calculations. You have to use a modicum of common sense. You have to kind of hope you're not being misled by somebody. And you then have to actually complete the purchase and tow it home. And you have to load your cargo into it. And then you have to take it across the scales and know how to read those tickets. And to do it right, you have to actually scale the thing with the trailer on and with the trailer off. And again, JD pointed you to a couple of those channels, the big channels everybody knows. Changing Lanes, Keep Your Daydream. They've done fantastic videos on this. It's part of the reason I've never bothered doing a video of it myself, because they just did it so well that I don't think I need to. But they, the way that you load cargo and the way that you in the chat section load cargo, you're going to take, if you bought the exact same RV, you're going to all have different hitch weights. And depending on what you put in your vehicle and how many people, you're going to have different forces in play. And until you load your thing and you scale it, you don't really know. So a little pro tip from your Uncle Josh is, if you know that Thursday is taking the RV home day, Thursday night should be loading the RV day, then Friday morning should be cat scale day. And you should, as soon as possible, find out what you're really getting into here, because if something is really screwy and sideways, maybe you still have a time-based opportunity to contact your dealership and swap that out. But again, I've seen plenty of RV dealer agents steer people incorrectly, intentionally or unintentionally, and I've seen the exact same thing happen just as many times from automotive dealerships. So it's just a really annoying, frustrating thing. But actually, cat scales are your friend. I guess that's the easiest thing I can say, is that cat scales are your friend.
Yep. And real quick, I just want to add something to what you said about scaling your RV, spending the day getting your RV there, setting it up, getting it positioned. And here's the thing that's really nice about this. Once you do that, take everything you think you need to take with you. Just make sure you're not overloading it to your best degree. When you scale it, you're going to see if you're riding heavy. If you're riding heavier than you thought, if the numbers don't add up, you can remove stuff. I think almost anybody can go through the closet of their home, the garage at their house, or the basement in their RV and find a couple 100 pounds worth of stuff they just don't need there. That's not considered emergency, not considered something that's critical. And it's just brought along for that, just in case we need it kind of scenario. Once you scale out and you figure out where you're at and you're safe and the numbers look good, you don't have to do it very often. That's the key. You get this taken care of. If you add stuff to your RV later, if you start carrying more, if you add what you consider to be more than what you had the last time, then yes, go scale it again. But if you put your RV on a bit of a diet and you realize that the cat scale numbers were a little eye-opening, that it's never good to be at or near capacity. That's the problem people have sometimes, is they're like, it's okay to be at or near capacity. For me, I want a margin. I want a pretty good margin to know that whatever I'm using to tow my trailer has more than enough capability, has more than enough payload. I don't want to feel like it's right there. You know what? I'm just squeaking over the line. I'm good. I have 5 pounds of additional payload capacity. We're ready to hit the road. I like margin. That's one of the reasons why I believe Josh and I talk about, look at your gross vehicle weight rating of the trailer. Typically, that's going to be heavier than what you load it with. If you have a trailer that's 7,000 pounds dry and it's got a 9,000 or 9,500 pound, basically a ton and a half worth of cargo capacity, the reality is you're probably not going to put 2,500 pounds worth of stuff inside of your RV. Why try to do that? The reality here is, if you only put 1,000 pounds of stuff in your RV, leaving you 1,500 pounds of remaining cargo capacity on your RV, that's great. That's margin. That means I haven't overloaded anything. My truck's good, my RV's good, and I'm in a better position to tow safer.
Well, one last thing, definitely do it right away. One of the maybe things that I've encountered talking to people who trade in RVs, or I see service related things come in through the store from time to time, people who own the RV for 4, 5, 6 years, they don't realize how much crap they accumulate. I have seen so many people like, well, on trade-in day, just pull the trailers up door to door and I'll just transfer stuff over real quick. And then half a day later, they're still there and they send their spouse to Wendy's because they're starving and they're hangry and they're tired and they're sore. They just keep, oh, I'll add that. You don't realize how much crap you add to it. So good practice is every spring when you pull it out and you do that spring cleaning and you check your roof seams, which of course I know everyone's doing. Get like, that's another time to re-edit, everything that's in the RV, take stock of everything. Do you need it? I'll never forget this thing. It was a customer that bought from my home store, and they had this RV 4 or 5 years. It was one of these like 35-foot 2-slide bunkhouses. And in year 4 or 5, they came in, this thing's junk. The axles are bowing. It's falling apart. I'm like, what do you mean the axles are bowing? Was it doing that the first 3 or 4 years? They're like, no, it just started it. Okay, well, typically an axle doesn't just on year 5 go, I'm tired. That doesn't tend to happen. How much stuff do you have in this? Oh, I mean, just our normal camping stuff. Well, what they found, my service tech found that basically they left the back bunk room for their grandkids. And it was a grandpa and grandma who took their grandkids camping a lot. And in the floor, between the chassis frame rails, it had like the floor flipped up and it was like a toy chest. Well, every single trip, the grandkids started this tradition where they would each find a rock and they would bring it back and keep it in the freezer. And we found that they had something like 900 pounds of rocks stuffed like squirrels in every nook and cranny of the bunkhouse, but never just laying anywhere over the floor. And they had no idea all this was back there. And it was bad for towing. It's unsafe when that much weight's that far behind the axle, especially on a trailer that long. And it ended up overloading their stuff. Thankfully, they towed. They started noticing that the tires were wearing funny, and that got them looking. It's a miracle they didn't blow tires and end up all over the road. So, you say, check it once and then you're done. Man, you know what? Make a list and check it twice. That should be part of your everyday thing. Yeah, somebody, we need to get a link to JD's trailer tongue weight scale and get that posted here so people can check that out, because that's an awesome, awesome thing.
Yeah, I was checking his stuff out before we already kind of started this whole conversation. That was one of the first things I noticed. I was like, that's a really interesting little idea. Just because it does give you that reassurance when you decide to tow this thing. That tongue weight can be a real issue for half-ton towability, because these things are, I mean, a lot of half-tons ride like Cadillac now, you know, and they're not meant for a lot of payload, but that little
real quick, JB, sorry to interrupt you there, but JD said something earlier. He said, you know, like, it is possible that you could have, let's say, you could have a half-ton and a 3/4 ton, both with, say, like 1,800 pounds of payload.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, they still ride and handle different. And the easiest way to see that is you get out of the truck and you stand back and ask your 3 friends to stand in the bed of those trucks and jump. And I think JD did something like that on his channel, or he just kind of tested it. And you see the half-ton, the suspension moves when 4 big guys are jumping in that, like you expect. And the same 4 guys get over into the 3/4 ton with allegedly the same payload, and they jump in it, and the thing just doesn't move. Yeah. It's not the same experience between the two of them.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize what you said enough. We did that test, and it was obvious to anybody who was there, who just stood on the back bumper, even individually. It's like a trampoline on the back of a half-ton truck, and then you move to a 3/4 ton truck, and it didn't budge. And if it did move, it returned to its position very quickly, to its level position very quickly. And that's the part, again, I always want to emphasize to people is half-ton trucks, unless you're buying it in a fleet configuration for a city who they don't care about the people in the truck very much, it's designed for comfort. It's designed to be the equivalent of a luxury SUV. That's the reason why trucks are outselling everything else on the road. That's the reason why car sales have plummeted. SUV sales have dropped off, and truck sales are continuing to be as strong as they are. It gives you the utility you're looking for. I love half-ton trucks. We have a half-ton truck. We have an F450. The half-ton truck gets more miles on it than the F450 because my wife enjoys it. My child enjoys it. We can go to anywhere we need to go for the most part, pick up whatever we need, and we are happy. But we're never going to tow a 5th wheel behind a half-ton truck, and we're not going to tow a large travel trailer behind a half-ton truck because it's just not that safe. Why use it for that purpose if it's not the ideal candidate for that purpose? And so if you're going to use it for towing a trailer, just be sure you get the right size and weight of trailer. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah.
Yeah. And this might be an opinionated question, kind of adding on top of this. This is like one of the last questions before we get to the live Q&A, guys. So if you're still watching, please, thank you for staying around. I really appreciate it. And if you are liking this, we would like to do some more of these. So if you like it, please let us know in the chat, because we'd really like to keep doing these, or at least I would. Hope these 2 guys, JD and Josh, as well, would like to do this. So one quick question before we end up to the live Q&A, guys. This might be opinionated a little bit, but Josh and JD, is there any particular trucks that you would, I guess, recommend for half-ton towing on the higher side of things? Because across all 3 the major brands, or 4 major brands, depending, GMC, Chevy, this is the same thing to me. They're pretty similar. I mean, you can't really, it's kind of just an opinion, or like a favoritism, whatever way. My dad's always owned a Ford, or whatever it may be. Let's say on the higher towing side of things, so like the big Eagle HT types, is there anything that you would recommend as a truck for that?
Go ahead, JD.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, yeah, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to give you my personal opinion. Again, this is an opinion of what I consider to be the most, I'm going to say, probably the most capable half-ton truck that you will buy today. That's probably for 2024, 2025. From any of the manufacturers, it's going to have between 1,600 and 1,850 pounds worth of cargo capacity. Typically closer to 1,850 pounds, and it's going to have a towing capacity of about 10,000 pounds. If you look at Toyota, you look at the new Tundra, That is kind of an interesting approach Toyota took. They weren't trying to, they didn't compete in the tailgate wars. They weren't trying to come up with a truck that has 13,500 pounds, 14,000 pounds worth of towing capacity. They were very honest and clear when they said, we want to put actual numbers of what we think our truck's capable of on it as a recommendation, as our rating. And that's what you should be able to use this truck for. So when I say, let's just say 1,800 pounds cargo capacity, if you look at the sticker and it says that, and the truck has a 10,000 pound towing capacity, that will typically put you in the realm of about a 7,000 pound travel trailer, maybe 7,500 pounds. When everything is said and done, you take roughly 10% of that dry, which would make up your dry tongue weight. You add all the stuff people bring with them, the stuff you're going to put in the bed of the truck, all of that, you'll probably have a total of about 900 to 950 pounds worth of weight pressing down on the back of your truck. Inside of the vehicle, you're going to have people, right? You're going to have your family, you're going to have everything else, and that will make up about 3/4 of what's left of that payload capacity. So ideal truck really comes down to understanding the ideal trailer for that truck. And in my opinion, if you find that perfect size truck, which is a very common truck, look at the door sticker, 1,800, 8,500 pounds worth of cargo capacity, at least 10,000 pounds worth of towing capacity, 7,500 pound travel trailer max is typically what I would pair to that. And that would be the truck I'd look for that size of trailer. But I wouldn't go larger on the trailer.
And that encompasses a lot of travel trailers, 7,500 pounds. I mean, that's
80% of them.
Yeah, it's a big percentage of them. So I think you'd be fine with that truck. And I think that's what my F-150 was when I had that. Josh, what do you have to add to that?
Well, so I am but a humble RV nerd. I'm not I've never been a motorhead. So my father, those of you who are familiar with my background, he was old Ford alumni. So if I didn't say that word at some point in this stream, he would just explode. But I mean, the obvious answer here is Ford Ranger. But I've never personally seen, whether it's a Ram, it's a GMC Chevy, a Ford pickup in the half-ton range. I've never seen one significantly outperform the others. It goes back to, pardon me, understanding, knowing your ratings, doing the homework, and know what you can tow before you go. I guess if I'm going to come up with my nerdy little rhymes, would be one of the things I would say there. But I don't know that there's Tundras are worth mentioning, certainly. I don't know that there is a specific brand that will get you further. And the thing that the danger they run into on the Ford Ranger is there's two. There's the Ford Ranger, and then there's the Ford freaking Ranger. And it was engineered with limitless payload and tow ratings. But you had to win the Willy Wonka tickets to get those.
Eat all the chocolate bars you can get. Try to get yourself a Ford Ranger. Awesome, guys. This has been wonderful. And we're going to just about to hop into the live Q&A here.
All right.
And one of the things that I had something and I just missed my mind. So I think we're just going to hop into the live Q&A. So forget what I just said. We're going to go to the live Q&A, guys. But I wanted to, I saw one pop up as we were talking. It was actually quite early on. And I wanted to start with this. It's by Camp SEC. I don't know who that was, but we're going to talk with this one because it says, the question is, guys, JD and Josh listening, do weight distribution hitches increase maximum allowable tongue weight?
Go ahead, JD.
So the answer is it's dependent largely on the receiver, the hitch on the back of your vehicle. You'll look at a rating on your vehicle. Some vehicles, if you look at like a 3/4 ton or a 1 ton truck now, they will allow you to tow maximum hitch weight without the need for a weight distribution hitch. But on almost every half-ton truck in existence, you're going to have a tow capacity or weight range capacity without a weight distribution hitch, and then one with a weight distribution hitch. And in most cases, it's going to be significantly higher if you use a weight distribution hitch. So weight distribution hitches absolutely can increase the rated or increase your ability to tow at your rated capacity. That's probably the better way of saying it. The weight distribution hitch will still not allow you to tow beyond your maximum payload or your maximum towing capacity.
Another way to maybe help people understand that is, there's, if you look at the receiver hitch on the back of like a 1-ton dually, it's a bigger square versus when you look at your half-ton, that's like a 2-inch square. That's called a class 3 hitch. Whereas the bigger trucks have a class 4 hitch. A class 4 hitch or above basically essentially already has weight distribution integrated into it. A very real way of thinking about a weight distribution hitch that you buy from a dealership and have installed is it's an external class 4 upgrade. Not exactly, but that's essentially what you're doing right there. There's something I wanted to add, and it just finally popped back into my head when we were talking about, our marketing efforts misleading people here. I think one of those things, and when we've kind of discovered this, just being real, like we're not perfect, but we're trying to be better. And one of the things that we've discovered is that, our people at the service counter and the parts counter, maybe they weren't necessarily trained the right way, because people would come in and say, hey, I want to do a fifth wheel to gooseneck conversion, or I want to add XYZ widget to the RV. And yeah, we can do that. And we're obviously certainly happy to take your money doing that. But where we were falling short, and where a lot of dealerships fall short, is not also informing the customer of the possible negative consequences of that. And that right there is one of the major areas where the frame flex conversation in a lot of fifth wheels could have been averted for so many people. And we had to look ourselves in the mirror and realize we were actually maybe putting like gooseneck conversions on people's fifth wheels that shouldn't have been there. And if they insist on it, that's okay. You're an American. You can make your decisions. We will do it. But where we were falling short is we were not necessarily always properly educating people on, yes, we can, but if you do, here's what could happen. And, that's one of those things where we've had to look ourselves in the mirror. We've fixed some people's RVs, and we're doing the better now to better educate our staff where it matters. But I don't know. I forgot how we got onto this. So now my train went off the tracks, but hey, we're live.
I came back to my train. If you guys are really liking this, we'll try to do this again. Just let us know in the comments, and we'll round up another thing. JD, I think you started to talk there.
I want to say one thing real quick here. This stream was supposed to go out live on both my channel, where a lot of you are watching it, and JD's channel. Don't know what happened, some technical gremlin on the back end, but anybody who's watching this on my channel, please take a second, click over to BigTruckBigRV on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. Okay. The information he's saying here is the information he puts out every day. And I absolutely don't think I'm the only person with information or an opinion. And I absolutely encourage you to get info from all the sources that you can.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing
about the tech thing, dude.
Oh, it's okay. We'll get it figured out. And I'm going to re-air this on my channel as well. So I appreciate all the time and effort the folks at Bishop put into this. But the comment I wanted to make is one that people oftentimes don't think about. And this is when you were towing an RV 20 years ago, you were towing it regardless of what size of truck you had, with a truck that probably had 1/3 the horsepower and torque as it has today. Hey, look, there's the is this the Wizard of Oz?
Morning.
Yeah. Nobody sees the wizard. Not no one, not no how.
Sorry, guys, that it wasn't supposed to happen. Peter glitch. I'm going to leave now.
I'm just hoping you're wearing pants.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
It just lets people know that it takes an army. It takes a team to put something like this together.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say real quick, guys, is that a lot of people don't realize that 20 years ago, when you bought a truck, it probably has 1/3 of the horsepower and torque as a truck that you buy today. The horsepower and torque wars have gotten insane. I never would have thought in a million years that I would have a truck with 1,200 pound-feet of torque and 500 horsepower, right? We weren't prepared for that. That torque, that force, that energy pulling. Imagine what that does to trailers that have largely, from a frame perspective, not changed much. So you have to think you're yanking on a trailer with much more power than we ever have. So from a towability perspective, when we talk about this stuff, you also have to factor in the decisions we make to get more powerful vehicles and how those powerful vehicles can actually potentially lead to some towing related issues, some structural related issues. And, yes, you can always make things stronger, but when you make things stronger, you also make things, fill in the blank, heavier. I just wanted to drop that in real quick.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
and that's another problem. There is this phenomenon I call the fattening of RVs. Look at, you can look through just my video records, or you can look through manufacturers' histories on their websites and look at the same model over like a 6-year period. Every year, it keeps getting a little heavier, but the frame, the suspension, the running gear, none of that stuff typically changes until they hit a point where, it starts failing. And I put the camera on an RV at my home store yesterday that is a model that's been out for a while. And the thing is awesome, but as they've added so much crap to it, completely unloaded, it had 463 pounds of available cargo on the trailer. You are going to very likely overload that trailer. And it's one of those things we're talking a lot about the overloading aspects of the vehicle, but you also really want to keep an eye on the available cargo capacity on the trailer itself. That's kind of not related, but kind of related. I wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. You have anything to add to that, or can I move on to the next question?
Boy, I this could go on for hours. I do have something to add. It's actually really great. I'll keep it real short. Yeah. So if you have a 10,000 pound GVWR RV and the manufacturer of that RV tells you that the dry weight 7,500 pounds, what does that leave you? 2,500 pounds worth of cargo capacity, right? So if you're not careful, does that mean I can take a Toyota Prius and put it in the front basement section? Because if a Toyota Prius weighs 2,300 pounds, I'm technically under my cargo capacity rating. Understand where weight should go, how much weight you should carry, and if every single part of that frame is actually designed to carry all that weight. Again, be smart when it comes to loading your RV and understand that just because they give you a rating does not mean you need to go up to that rating. And it also doesn't mean that the trailer in any part of that RV can hold that rating. That was my little rant. Thank you.
Great.
Perfect. Yeah. And there's some other ratings on that to really find your tow rating, payload capacity. You can find websites to find that. I know there's several out there. I used them when I was a salesman. But one question that kind of popped up here that caught my eye, it's a little different. It's from Daniel Johnson. Daniel Johnson, thank you for typing this one in. It's, what is the preferred length of a travel trailer for a typical half ton? Now, it's not really overall length is it's really a problem, right? It's usually the weight that we're talking about. So the question is, I'm going to read it out. What is the preferred length of the travel trailer for a typical half ton? Looking for the best length to weight trailer of my half ton. Payload is 2,500. We don't really need to know that, but is there any, does the length really play a factor to you guys? So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. I'm using my computer now, so I can't pull this up, but I actually have like a little spreadsheet calculator where you plug in your vehicle's wheelbase and it will tell you here's the trailer wheelbase that you could tow before you begin to experience negative towing effects. So the length of your vehicle and the length of the trailer absolutely matter in relation to one another. I don't have that up. I don't know if JD has some rough calculations on hand. I don't know if we can get a link for that and throw it up in chat. But there's absolutely, I don't remember the exact numbers, but if your vehicle's wheelbase is 184 inches, then you can tow a trailer that's 32.6 before it starts to get a little more pushy. And it's not like the moment you go past that, you're like, oh, this is bad. It's kind of like JD said. That's where experience starts to come into play. If you're an over-the-road truck driver and you tow all day, every day, you know how to handle it. If you're somebody like me who doesn't do it as often, it's it takes me just a little mental second longer. It's not as instinctive to offer the proper correction on the vehicle. And that's where, people start stabbing the brakes, which is the wrong thing to do if it starts going like that, So the length of the trailer absolutely does. But again, you can't just say, what's the right length for a half ton?
Yeah.
Which half ton? You need to get your wheelbase and you need to compare that to the length of the RV. You don't just say, I have a half ton, so I can tow a 30-foot trailer. That's exactly the stinking thing that gets people in danger.
And to kind of add to that, Josh is absolutely right. And we've talked about that from the beginning of this live stream to now, that understanding the length, understanding true numbers capabilities is super important. What I typically say, because people want to hear a number, and what I typically will tell people, that if you have the most common configured truck, a modern half-ton truck with a max tow package, with a payload capacity between 1,500 and 1,800 pounds, four-wheel drive, four-door truck. That is the most common half-ton configuration truck sold today. And most of them are in mid to high trim packages. So they're XLT and up. I recommend a trailer no longer than 27.5 feet and weighing less than 6,000 to 6,500 pounds GVWR. Now, I know a lot of folks are going to be like, well, that's kind of ludicrous. That's small. Well, if you guys follow my channel, you know that we collaborated with Forest River and the Surveyor lineup specifically, and they basically said, we'll build you any size trailer you want, or that we make. And I went specifically for a trailer that fit in that honey area, that Goldilocks zone, because I wanted to preach what I talk about. Now, the key here is that those numbers, again, might not apply to you if you don't have that truck, if you don't have the truck configured. Here's another one too. A lot of people will say is, I have a 2010 Ram 1500. What can I tow? And then I'll say, okay, give me all the details on the truck. I will give you my attempted roundabout guess. And then they give me all the details. And the one detail that they leave out is the mileage on the truck. I'm like, how many miles? Oh, I got, it's a baby truck. It's got 218,000 miles on it. I'm like, okay, do you realize that trying to find the biggest trailer you can tow behind a truck with 218,000 miles on it could potentially mean that the engine and transmission on your truck fail before the suspension or before you run into any other issues? So it's so difficult for Josh or myself to make a recommendation on a truck or on a trailer without absolutely knowing every detail about it. And that's one of the reasons why we typically run away from making exact recommendations for people, because we don't know how your truck's been driven. We don't know how you've used it. We don't know if you maintain it. We don't know what all the actual numbers on it are. And without all of those facts, it's hard for us just to say, yes, you can tow this trailer without any problem at all.
Awesome.
Well, for those who are watching the chat, Matt's RV Reviews, how you doing out there, Matt, has entered the chat, and he said, but my Dodge towed a spaceship on the commercial. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of marketing that gets people killed. I was just scrolling Facebook the other day, and it says the company that makes the towing guides, it says, like, here's the towing guides, and it says, because tow rating is the only thing that matters. Dude, that's how people get killed. And I mean that sincerely,
Yeah. And this is, this is why we had this one of the conversations, sorry, my apologies. It's been a long day. This is why we're having this conversation. The half-ton towability, it is a safety concern. And that's why I wanted to have these guys on here. If you guys have any topics or anything that you want to hear about and we'll get these guys in here again, put them in the chat, please. We'd love to hear it. And the links that we're talking about, guys, let's kind of collaborate after this and put those all into the chat or in the description of this video later on. JD, Josh, thank you so much. JD, you have anything to add before we end up kind of closing this out?
No, I really appreciate putting this together. When we first started talking about this, the biggest misconception I felt that we had to address first is that Josh and I are not the same person. I think we clarified that. And I don't even think we sound the same, but some people do.
To be fair, JD, to be fair, no one's ever seen our face on camera at the same time.
That is absolutely true. But I can tell you that Josh is far more witty and funnier than I am in person. I just kind of sit back and enjoy the show because he's a great guy, great loads of resources, and quite frankly, I think he does probably better RV reviews than I do. He's got an editor though, so. But at the end of the day, guys, really, really, really happy with how this stream turned out. I think it's a wealth of information. I learned some stuff even as well. And I thank you all for coming and spending your evening with us. I truly appreciate that also.
And Josh, thank you, JD. I really appreciate that. Josh, you have anything you'd like to say?
No.
And there it is. There it is. Matt, thank you for joining the live stream. I appreciate it.
That's it. That's it. That's how this ends right there.
Okay. All right. Well, Josh, thank you very much. JD, I do appreciate it. Give those guys a follow. You know, Josh does, he goes through the RVs again, better than most. JD said it himself. And JD, you do a lot of great things as well. You have so much information out there for everybody, and you really push people in the right direction and give them the right information. Guys, if you don't know me, my name is Jake. JB by everyone calls me, but I run the RV Voice. I talk to full-timers and helping people try to go full-time or wanting to go full-time. That's what I do. And I also talk to manufacturers to get really nitty-gritty with those things. So if you want to give me a follow, I'm the RV Voice. Follow JD at BigTruckBigRV on YouTube, Instagram, all those things. And as well, Josh, please give him a follow as well. So guys, if you have anything else, please, if you have any comments, please put them in there for what else you would like to hear us talk about, because we're going to do this again. It sounds like, if you guys are cool with that, Josh and JD, I'd love to have you guys back on here. Oh,
and I'd love to say, drop a comment. I'd love to know if this went the way you thought it would.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully it did.
You know, JD, did you have anybody messaging you privately making predictions? Because I had people like, hey, are you two going to get into a fist fight or something like that? Like I'm kind of curious.
Well, that might have been my doing.
After seeing Josh and his RV yoga, I don't want to fight that guy. My Texas charm ain't going to win against RV yoga.
I don't know karate, but I know crazy. Seriously, everybody in the chat, everybody tuned in. Thank you. You know, every time I'm looking over here, I'm watching the chat. Thank you, all the people that took time out of your nights to watch this. We both have additional resources on our channels for you, and drop either of us a note in either of our comment sections on our videos, and we can absolutely send you links to supplementary videos that we've done that might help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys. Well, if this is all it is, stay tuned for more from the RV Voice. Thanks again, guys.